Fighting is tough. Being a leader is tough. So when you have to lead people into battle, you're going to want all the help you can get to avoid disaster. That's why today, I'll be going over how fighting in Persona 3 works as well as explain some lesser known battle details. Welcome to a newcomer's guide to Persona 3. First, let's begin with how to start the fight. When walking around the dungeon, you can press X to swing your weapon. This is the only way to start battles with an advantage. The first turns in battle are decided by who hits the other first. If you hit a shadow, your team will go first, and if you get hit by a shadow, the shadows will gain the upper hand. Additionally, if you hit a shadow while it's completely unaware of your presence, you'll ambush them. This will not only guarantee that your team will go first, but it will give you an extra turn before the shadows get to go. Once in battle, you'll be able to see you and your party member's status on the right side of the screen. The order in which teammates get their turns is completely based on RNG and varies between encounters. If a teammate's health reaches 0, they will fall unconscious and will remain that way even after the battle is over. This can be fixed by using a revival spell or item. However, if your HP were to reach 0, you will be hit with an instant game over and be taken all the way back to the title screen. So in fights you should look out for yourself more than anyone else. Why can't my team just revive me, you ask? Well, to that I have no answer other than the developers simply didn't want them to. I guess they felt that the game would be too easy if the only way to lose was getting your whole team wiped out. But tying it to the protagonist's death just kinda makes it feel cheap and unfair. Especially since a few people on your team do actually learn revival spells, which they can use on each other but for some reason not on you. Sure, this is balanced out by the fact that you can fuse personas that make you nearly indestructible, but seeing a teammate get revived over and over and then dying yourself without a second chance doesn't seem fair to most people. Anyway, back on topic. When entering combat, you'll be given a rotating menu with 7 different options to choose from. First, you have attack, in which you'll use your current weapon to strike an enemy of your choice. This attack doesn't cost anything to use, but doesn't do as much damage as a Persona skill. Attacks with weapons can deliver critical hits, which deal 50% more damage to the enemy and knocks them down, in addition to playing a cool animation and a very satisfying sound effect.
Alright, good job.
Besides critical hits, you can also deal semi-crits with your weapon. Half crits or semi-crits are represented by an extra swing of your weapon in your attack animation. They deal 25% more damage but don't knock enemies down. Unless you're using a bow and arrow, attacking an enemy and missing has a chance of causing you to trip and stumble, meaning you'll be knocked down and will have to spend your next turn getting back up. Next we have the skills option, in which you can use your current persona's active skills to attack your enemies or support your team. They can cost either SP or HP to cast depending on the skill you're using. Next is items. You can find all the usable items you acquired here. They can do pretty much anything, from dealing damage to healing to curing status elements, you get the idea. Next is the tactics option. Tactics are the only way of communicating with your party. Selecting this option will give you a list of all your teammates. Pressing X on all members or selecting any party member that isn't your navigator will show you a list of all the available commands that you can give out. I could go more in detail about how this works, but the tactic system is so complex that I think it deserves its own video. So for now, I'll just give an overview of each tactic. Act Freely gives them free reign on the skills they can use. Full Assault puts them entirely on the offensive, meaning they won't support or heal at all. Knockdown makes them use whatever means they have to knock all enemies down. Heal/support will make them focus on healing or using support skills, but allows them to use offensive skills if the party is already healthy. Attack Fallen will tell your teammates to target knockdown enemies. Assign Target will mark an enemy for your team to focus on. Conserve SP will keep them from using any skills that require it. Same Target will make them focus on killing the last enemy you attack. And finally, Standby will make them skip their turn without doing anything. You won't have access to all the tactics from the get-go, as you must unlock some of them through story progression. The next option in the battle menu is Persona Change. You have the option to change your persona to any of the ones you're carrying around with you, but only once per turn. So be very careful when changing personas, as accidentally choosing a persona you did not intend to pick cannot be corrected until your next turn, which can end up causing you a lot of trouble. Next we have Escape. If a fight isn't going well or you simply don't feel like fighting an enemy, you can use up your turn attempting to run away. This works 85% of the time, but there will be a few instances where you'll fail to escape, meaning you simply wasted your turn. Boss fights cannot be escaped from, so once you start combat with them, the only way out is winning or losing the fight. You can tell an escape was successful the second you see the rush button disappear. Finally, we have wait. This option is pretty much useless unless you're trying to keep an enemy from getting a turn through stun locking. I'll explain what stun locking is in a few moments. Besides the options you have in your rotating menu, you have a few other things you can do in battle. If you press L1, you can request an enemy analysis. Once you select the shadow, your navigator will start to scan it, and then 3 turns later she will reveal all of the enemy's elemental attributes. Shadow information is saved permanently, so if you already scanned an enemy before, scanning them again will give you all their information instantly. You can tell if you've already scanned an enemy by the lack of question mark on them. If you kill an enemy before they're fully analyzed, your navigator will tell you they were unable to scan them on time. This only happens if there's no other instances of that enemy left in battle. This means that if you're in a fight with 2 identical shadows, request a scan on one, and then kill it, your navigator will still be able to tell you their attributes as long as the other one is alive. Another thing you can do in combat is see turn order. If you press and hold R1, you'll be shown the turn order of everyone in battle. This is a huge aid in deciding your next move in fights, as it can help you determine which shadow is more of an immediate threat than the others. Lastly, you can press triangle at any time during battle to activate rush mode. Rush mode will cause all of your team to only use their weapons to attack the enemy, prioritizing the one with the lowest health. Their movement will be sped up and their crits will skip their cool animation. This overrides any tactics option your team is set to. Keep in mind that pressing triangle will immediately end your turn, so be careful not to press it by accident. Those are all the actions you can perform in fights. Next, I'll try to explain how the knockdown system works. Get ready because it's about to get a little bit complicated. Keep in mind this applies to everyone equally, so everything I describe here affects you and your team unless explicitly stated otherwise. Let us begin. As mentioned in my first video, attacks can belong to one of the 9 different elemental damage types in the game. Shadows and personas can be weak to, resist, be immune to, reflect, and absorb these kinds of damage. The only exception being light and darkness spells, which cannot be absorbed. Hitting an elemental weakness or scoring a critical hit on an enemy will cause them to become knocked down. This also gives the attacker an extra turn. Knockdown enemies cannot dodge attacks and take extra damage. Attacking a knockdown enemy will cause them to recover from their knockdown state. Debuffs and status ailments as well as light and darkness spells do not count as attacks and therefore can be used without the target getting up. But with the exception of debuffs, these spells aren't guaranteed to land as their hit chance is entirely based on RNG. If by mistake you hit a knockdown enemy with a spell that it's immune to, they will instantly recover. This rule also applies to light and darkness spells. So while light and darkness spells don't count as attacks against non-immune shadows, they will still cause shadows immune to them to recover. If an enemy is knocked down and it's their turn to act, they will be forced to use their turn to recover from their downed status, which will impede them from doing anything else until their next turn. This can happen as many times as an enemy is knocked down, depriving them of their turns indefinitely. Some people call this stun locking, so I'll refer to it as that from now on. I know what you're thinking. If I can keep enemies from having a chance to attack me by stun locking them, how are any of the fights dangerous? Well, the answer is you can't knock down an enemy forever. And the reason is 2 letters, S and P. SP is an important resource that lets you cast the majority of the spells in the game. It's very valuable and hard to recover while inside the dungeon. Burning it in a few battles by stun locking enemies will drain your SP quick, which will end up making later battles much more difficult for you. Although there are some ways to replenish SP like skills, items, and equipment, these are costly, rare, or not very effective. So it's best to abstain from stun locking every encounter. This doesn't mean that you should never use this strategy, as sometimes making an enemy miss their turn is better than dealing more damage. As I mentioned before, knocking an enemy down will net you an extra turn. But there are a few conditions that must be met beforehand. First, the enemy you're attacking must not be already knocked down. That way, you can't just cast the same spell over and over on an enemy until it's dead. And second, it must be done with a single target spell. Hitting a weakness or scoring a critical hit with a multi-target spell will not give you an extra turn. Again, this all applies to both teammates and enemies, so be careful not to get stun locked by a shadow. There is, however, one benefit that you can get from the knockdown system that your enemies don't have access to. If you knock down all of your enemies, one of your party members will prompt you to rush at them while they're defenseless. Declining will simply give the last person to attack a turn. Accepting, however, will initiate an all-out attack. An all-out attack is a powerful special move in which your team will run up to your foes before wailing on them, dealing massive damage to all enemies. The strength of an all-out attack is measured by the damage of your team's weapons as well as the amount of people participating. Party members that are unconscious, knocked down, or charmed will not take part in all-out attacks, and so will not add their damage to the assault. If you've been knocked down or charmed, you will not be able to start an all-out attack at all. You also need at least one other person fighting with you to perform one. Knocking down all enemies while you're alone will only give you an extra turn. All out attacks deal extra damage if there's only one enemy being attacked, which makes them very strong in boss encounters. Did you get all that? Don't worry, it's fine if you didn't. It's a really complex system full of exceptions, conditions, and weird unexplained rules, but you'll get the hang of it after a few hours. The most important parts of this that you must always remember are: hitting a weakness or crit equals downing an enemy plus gaining a turn. Knocking all enemies down means all out attack. All out attack means big damage, and big damage equals victory. That's it. As long as you remember that, you're more than ready. After finishing a fight, you'll be shown the results screen, in which you'll see the amount of XP gained as well as any items you acquired. Both your character and personas can gain XP and level up. Your battle stats are not tied to your character itself, but to your persona. So if your character levels up, the only thing you'll gain is more HP and SP, as well as being able to store more personas inside your mind when you reach certain levels. If your persona levels up, however, it will gain stat points as well as the opportunity to learn a new skill. Each enemy is worth a certain amount of experience. Depending on the number of party members you have, the experience is split evenly between you. The less party members in a fight, the more XP is gained. If you end battle with an unconscious teammate, the XP will still split equally, but the dead teammate won't gain their share, meaning that XP is lost forever. When you defeat the last enemy, there's a chance that you'll be presented with a minigame called Shuffle Time. Shuffle Time allows you to receive additional rewards after a fight. When Shuffle Time starts, you'll be shown multiple cards with different symbols on them indicating their prices. Red swords will gift you random weapons. Yellow coins will give you money. Blue cups will replenish you or your team's health. Green ones will give you extra XP based on a fraction of what you gain in battle or give you extra stats for your persona. And finally, cards with images of personas on them will give you that persona. Pressing any button will cause the cards to flip upside down and start shuffling around. Once it stops, you'll be given 6 seconds to pick a card. The card you select will flip and reveal your prize. If you fail to pick a card in time, the game will select whatever card you have highlighted. Most of the time you want to go for ones, as extra XP is always a great thing to have. After that, you'll want coins for the money to get better equipment. Then there's cups, which will help you save SP on healing. Finally, there's swords, which are pretty much useless and will always give you weapons that are far worse than the ones you have. This is functionally just a coin card that's painted red, in the sense that its only value is getting money by selling the weapons. After a card is chosen, there's a small chance that you'll be offered to double up. This lets you acquire an extra persona at the risk of losing your current rewards. Oh, and if you ever see a card with a skull on it, avoid it like the plague. Trust me, whatever the reward on the card is, it's not worth the downside. Shuffle Time is only assured to happen if you finish the battle with an all-out attack or if the main character kills the last enemy. If anyone else deals the final blow, there's still a small chance that it will happen, but it won't be guaranteed. Finally, I want to touch up on character conditions. There are 4 conditions you and your teammates can experience. These are great, good, tired, and sick. All of these affect battle performance significantly and cannot be removed or cured inside the dungeon, so it's important to be familiar with them. The first condition is called good, and means being in a regular, normal state, neither strong nor weak. After that, we have the great condition. While in this state, you'll be at the peak of your power, with all your parameters receiving a boost, making you stronger and tougher in fights. This is achieved by getting enough sleep at night and on rare occasions going to the bathroom. Regardless of if you're in a good or great condition, after a number of fights, you'll eventually get exhausted, which will cause you to become tired. When in tired condition, you will suffer from decreased combat efficiency, not only dealing less damage, but taking a lot more of it as well. If anyone that's tired gets knocked down, it will be harder for them to get up. When returning back to the dungeon lobby, your tired party members will go back to the dormitory to rest. Being tired can only be cured by leaving the dungeon and resting for a few days. After that, you'll regain your strength and be ready to go shadow hunting once more. However, leaving the dungeon while tired can also cause you to become sick. In this state, you will deal almost no damage and go down in a few hits. Recovering from being sick will take longer than when you're tired, meaning you will have to wait more days before being able to fight normally again. As you fight more and more shadows, your stamina will gradually improve, making it increasingly harder for you to become exhausted, until you reach a point where you won't get tired at all. And that is pretty much all you need to know about battles. There are still some little details that you'll learn as you go, but I believe I've gone through everything that's important. I want to wrap this video up by giving out some tips and lesser known details that I believe will help you in fights. Number 1. You can tell if an all-out attack will end the fight or not. If you look closely at a cloud of smoke, you'll sometimes see your teammates being launched away. This indicates that the enemy that your team is currently pummeling still has enough strength to fight back. If your team isn't knocked back from the smoke, it means they have successfully annihilated the shadow. Number 2. While in combat, pressing circle will make the menu jump directly to the attack option. This helps speed up menu navigation quite a bit. You can also press square to skip your turn without having to use the menu. Number 3. If by some reason one of your party members doesn't join battle, or you split up your team and you're facing a foe that you think you need help with, you can ask your team to join you by using the tactics menu. Select your navigator. There you will find an option called Request Help. Selecting it will make your whole team join you one by one, until all of your party is back together. Number 4. In the game's options under System, you will find a setting called Tactics Memory. By default, your party will start all fights on the Act Freely tactic, but if you would prefer them to be on the last tactic you set them to, you can turn this option on. This way you won't have to set your main attacker to full assault or your healer to support on every encounter. And that's all I have for today. I know this video was more focused on informing than on being funny, but it's kinda hard to write jokes and explain the game properly at the same time. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Until next time.
Wanna put you